Donald Trump's attorneys need to get this man like a fidget spinner or something shiny, because apparently over the weekend he got really bored and decided to get himself into even more legal and political hot water by getting onto Truth Social and, in all caps, issuing what many regard as a threat against witnesses and critics, prompting the Department of Justice to take swift action. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. So, I imagine this is probably common to malignant narcissists who have very poor impulse control. So basically Donald Trump, he feels the walls closing in, I imagine. 3 indictments so far, 1 out of New York, 2 federal indictments from special counsel Jack Smith, another indictment potentially coming from the Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney Fonnie Willis for election interference, another lawsuit from the New York Attorney General against the Trump Organization, which, if successful, would effectively kill that organization's operations in New York. So it's just a bunch of stuff coming in. And over the weekend, Donald Trump went on Troth Central, his social media site, and in all caps issued a threat. And I want to get the exact quote here. Prosecutors pointed specifically to a post on Trump's Truth Social platform from earlier Friday in which Trump wrote in all capital letters, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." So that is what many regard as a threat from a very powerful former president, potential future president of the United States, something to take seriously. So what's the story here? Well, so the Justice Department asked a federal judge, Judge Tanya Chatkin, an Obama appointee who is overseeing the second federal indictment or the trial of the federal indictment about Donald Trump's attempts to steal the 2020 election from Joe Biden. They asked Judge Chatkin in Washington, D.C. to step in after he released a post online that appeared to promise revenge on anyone who goes after him. Prosecutors on Friday requested that Chutkan issue a protective order concerning evidence in the case a day after Trump pled not guilty to charges of trying to overturn the 2020 election loss and block the peaceful transition of power. The protective order, different from a gag order, would limit what information Trump and his legal team could share publicly about the case brought by special counsel Jack Smith. So Chutkan, Judge Chutkan, who we talked about in a previous video, this woman is ruthless in the best possible way. She has presided over the harshest penalties, the harshest punishments of January 6th defendants and insurrectionists. She has thrown the book at these people, which they deserve. And she was also somebody who issued one of the iconic judicial clapbacks in a previous case filed by Trump's attorneys in which he effectively tried to block the January 6th committee from getting certain correspondence and documentation from his time in the White House. He basically asserted executive privilege even though he's no longer president. And the current president, Joe Biden, said, "No, I'm not going to honor that." And so Trump tried to sue and basically have the courts protect his documents. And Judge Chutkan presided over the case, and she issued this great line which says, "Presidents are not kings," meaning their authority is limited. They're not absolute monarchs. "Presidents are not kings, and plaintiff, Trump, is not president." Basically saying the current president, Joe Biden, is not going to honor your request, and I'm not going to try to force him to do it, so suck it, right? So it was a beautiful legal clapback. I love it. So as we talked about, this is the exact opposite of the judge that he drew in the Florida National Defense Information or National Defense Documents case, Aileen Cannon, who was a Trump appointee and who bent over backwards to accommodate Trump in previous cases. So Judge Chutkan is like the antithesis, all right? So with all that in mind, when this happened on Friday and the Department of Justice issued a request for a protective order, Chutkan on Saturday gave Trump's legal team until 5 p.m. Monday to respond to the government's request. Trump's legal team, which indicated he would look to slow the case down despite prosecutors' pledge of a speedy trial, then filed a counter request to extend the response deadline to Thursday and hold a hearing on the matter. Chutkan swiftly denied. She said, "No, we're not going to drag this out." You know, they basically said, "Listen, we have a busy weekend coming up, Monday, 5 p.m. That's too soon. Can we get an extension until Thursday?" And she went, "No." So if that's not an omen of what's to come, that this woman is not going to be overly accommodating. She'll probably be fair, but like to the brutal letter of the law, she's not going to bend over backwards to accommodate Trump and indulge his sense of privilege. But yeah, it's really cool. It's really funny to see, and we'll see what the results are. I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, I would be surprised if Judge Chutkan refused the Department of Justice's protective order. Protective orders, the Associated Press notes, are common in criminal cases, but prosecutors said it's particularly important in this case because Trump has posted on social media about witnesses, judges, attorneys, and others associated with legal matters pending against him. Prosecutors pointed specifically to that particular, I don't know what he calls it, Twitter doesn't even exist anymore. It's X now. But when Twitter did exist, the posts were called tweets. I don't know what Truth Social utterances are, but again, he said, if you go after me, I'm coming after you. Prosecutors said they're ready to hand over a substantial amount of evidence, much of which includes sensitive and confidential information to Trump's legal team. They told the judge if Trump were to begin posting about grand jury transcripts or other evidence provided by the Justice Department, it could have a harmful, chilling effect on witnesses or adversely affect the fair administration of justice in this case. Prosecutors' proposed protective order seeks to prevent Trump and his attorneys from disclosing materials provided by the government to anyone other than the people on his legal team, possible witnesses, the witnesses' lawyers, or others approved by the court. It would put stricter limits on sensitive materials, which would include grand jury witnesses' testimony and materials obtained through sealed search warrants. Okay? Now, in response, Trump's attorney said, listen, this, if you come after me, I'm coming after you, is the definition of political speech and was made in response to dishonest special interest groups and super PACs. So again, I would be surprised if the judge indulges that and takes that excuse. I expect she'll probably grant the Department of Justice's protective order, which honestly, based on the evidence as I understand it, makes absolute sense. Donald Trump should not be given extraordinary discretion in this respect. He's a bad faith actor with extraordinary power and a predilection to abuse it, and no judge should accommodate that. So he should be granted only as much grace and discretion as the letter of the law provides, and not a single centimeter more.